Hello and welcome to Pros Before Joes. This episode will be focusing on the Commando perk for Killing Floor. We'll be talking about the stats of the Commando, the weapons loadout, and some general hints and tips that are useful for in-game. Let's take a look at the Commando stats. You will get a damage increase, recoil reduction, ammo capacity increase, and discount for all assault rifles. You will get a reload speed reduction for all weapons, not just those associated with the Commando. You will be able to detect cloaked enemies and health bars, and starting at level 3 you will be able to extend Z times. At level 5 and level 6 you will be able to spawn with the Bullpup and AK-47 respectively. The first weapon in the Commando's arsenal is the Bullpup. It is the cheapest weapon that you can get, and as a result, it is a very good off-perk weapon if you want to use an SMG. It can also be found lying around in weapon spawns. It has a fairly low damage output, but one advantage is it has a nice holographic sight, and the recoil is fairly low, so it's pretty easy to maintain the reticule on, say, a specimen's head to do the maximum damage output that you need. It is fairly useless against later specimens, and you should be using it only in the early waves. The next weapon is the AK-47. This weapon is the first of the tier 2 weapons, so it falls in between weapons such as the Bullpup and the Scar in terms of damage output. It does have a fairly good damage output for its price, however. And it does have a fairly manageable recoil, but you have to remember if you're firing full auto that it pulls upwards as well as to the right, so make sure that you compensate for that. Another thing to note is that it also has an iron sight instead of a red dot or holographic sight as other assault rifles have, so that may be a downside for some people. The next weapon is the MKB-42 assault rifle. This weapon is one of the newest additions to the Commando arsenal, and is one of the 2 weapons that you can purchase from the World War II era. Statistically, it has the same damage per shot and reload speed as the AK-47, but it is slightly more expensive and has a faster rate of fire than the AK-47. The recoil is also a little bit better because it only pulls upwards instead of up and to the right. But keep in mind this gun only has iron sights as well. But as a tier 2 weapon, it is a fairly good all-around weapon. The next weapon is the Tommy gun. This is the second of the World War II era weapons that you can purchase. Its damage and rate of fire landed in between the M4 and AK-47 assault rifles. And its recoil is similar to that of the Bullpup, so it's pretty easy to maintain your sights on a target. It's one of the cheapest tier 2 weapons and is also fairly lightweight as well. This gun is one of the featured weapons in the DLC weapon pack, so you need to have that weapon pack in order to use this. Also keep in mind to watch your ammo because of its high rate of fire. You may end up losing ammo fairly quickly if you don't pay attention to that. The final gun in the tier 2 bracket is the M4 carbine. Compared to the AK-47, this has less damage but is more accurate. In fact, when you're using it in single shot mode, this is one of the most accurate weapons that you can get as a Commando. However, when you're using it in full auto, it does have a noticeable recoil. There's another variant of this weapon that includes a grenade launcher attachment for demos. If you use that variant as the Commando, you will get the clip size increase and recoil reduction that you get with your perk, but not the damage increase. The first weapon in the tier 3 bracket is the Scar Mark 12. It is tied for the highest damage per shot and lowest clip size of all the Commando weapons. It's tied with the FNFAL, the other tier 3 weapon. Compared to the FNFAL, it is cheaper and has a faster reload, but it does have a lower rate of fire. It is fairly accurate with its red dot sight, but it does have a high recoil. Even when you get to the mid to high level Commando perks, it is still fairly noticeable. It's also very expensive, so that's a pretty big downside as well. The final weapon in the Commando arsenal and the final weapon in the tier 3 bracket is the FNFAL ACOG. Compared to the Scar, it does have the same damage per shot, but it does have a faster rate of fire and reduced recoil. However, it does have a longer reload rate than the Scar, so its DPS after reload is slightly less than the Scar. It is the most expensive weapon that you can get as a commando, so keep that in mind. It is a pretty big downside for most lower perked commandos. Personally, I prefer the ACOG scope over the red dot sight, but that is a matter of preference. My preferred loadout is the FNFAL and the Scar if I can afford it. If I can't afford the Scar, I'll usually go with the MKB because I just like the damage output of it compared to the other tier 2 weapons. As a commando, you will generally serve as the eyes of the squad because of your ability to see health bars and cloaked enemies. Spotting health bars becomes pretty useful in the later waves with the bigger specimens such as Grakes and Flesh Pounds, because you can gauge the best time for a team to coordinate its attacks on them. Spotting cloaked enemies is especially useful during the Patriarch wave because when he cloaks and runs, you can easily see where he goes and help coordinate with the team better. Because your damage output is not as good as other perks, it is generally advised to let the more suited perks such as Support Specialist or Sharpshooters deal with the larger specimens. However, you are very well suited for taking out the trash enemies such as Stalkers, Crawlers, Clots, and Gorefast because your weapons are very rapid fire and you can easily dispose of them very quickly. It is generally advised to carry 2 assault rifles with you at all times. That way, if you need to dish out a lot of damage quickly, you can empty the clip of one of them, switch to the other one, and empty the clip on that one as well. However, it's important to keep in mind that that will leave you pretty vulnerable afterwards because you will have to reload both weapons and that will take a long time. All of the Commando's weapons will have the ability to switch between full auto and semi-automatic fire. It's recommended that you keep your gun on single shot as often as you can. Not only will this conserve ammo, but it also increases your accuracy by 15% with diminishing returns. When you top that off with the 15% bonus to crouching and the 50% bonus to iron sights, a fully leveled commando can get a total of 78% recoil reduction. The commando is useful for utilizing off-perk weapons as well. This is because the reload reduction that you get helps counteract the fact that you don't get a damage bonus that you ordinarily would with the respective perks. Keep in mind that the commando does need stalkers to level up, so if you have a commando on your team, if at all possible, try to leave the stalkers to him unless the stalkers are absolutely tearing your guts out, because I'm sure the commando would be more than happy to take care of them for you. That'll wrap up this episode then. I hope that you found the hints and tips useful, and I will see you next time on Pros Before Joes.